When did you first take notice of the World Wrestling Federation, Mark?
Man, I started watching wrestling with my grandmother when I was 10, and we would go to, as you can see, the Mid-South poster. We would go to Louisiana. We'd go to Beaumont Civic Center and watch wrestling. We'd go to Houston and see Paul Bosch. I went to Dallas to the Sportatorium one time with my grandmother and my uncle Andrew to watch the Von Erichs and the Freebirds. Like I was a wrestling fan, and I used to talk about it all the time. And I remember doing Oprah, and Oprah asked me what I did, and I said, I watch wrestling and play video games. And she was like, well, that sounds kind of boring. I was like, no, I love wrestling. I was like, wrestling is the best, So my manager was friends with a guy that knew Vince. And he said, man, that boy loved that wrestling. Like, y'all should take a look at him. And one day Vince called me when I was at the Olympic Training Center. We used to live in co-ed dorms in the hallways. And somebody said, Mark, phone. So I run down, I grab the phone. I'm like, hello. And he was like, hey, this is Mark Henry. I said, yeah. He said, this is Vince McMahon. And I went, from wrestling? And he was like, yeah, this is Vince. He was like, I love to talk to you. And I said, yeah, right. And hung up on his ass, thinking it was one of my friends playing jokes on me. And the phone rung again, and it was my coach. Well, he wasn't my coach no more at that point, but Terry Todd. And Terry said, hey, man, Vince McMahon just told me you hung up on him. And I said, that was him for real? And he was like, hey, fool, take the phone call. And I was like, oh, my God, this is going to be embarrassing. And Vince calls me right back. And he goes, hey, man, that ain't the first time I've been hung up on. He's like, but I think that you would like what we do. And I'd like for you to come to Connecticut and see how we do things. And I was like, I could not believe it, bro. It was like somebody from a long lost family member calling you.
Now, Mark, you said before the Olympics, right? He wanted to sign you before the Olympics.
This was in '95.
I knew that you were signed with the WWE.
No. I'm sorry, Kurt. That was in '94.
Okay. I know you signed before the Olympics.
Yeah. Well, I didn't technically sign a wrestling contract. I had a endorsement deal with Foot Locker and with WWE. Oh. And the reason that I was able to do it and other Olympians couldn't do it is because I had my stuff before the Dream Team, actually. Okay. Is I was able to, because I was the world champion in a sport already, and it was pro. It wasn't amateur. Right. I was allowed to have my sponsors for powerlifting. So everything was legit and legal through powerlifting. And then I started doing the Olympic weightlifting, and it wasn't. And they said, well, you can only get grant money from the USO and the U.S. Olympic Committee and the NGB that you govern by U.S. weightlifting. You can't get other money. And I was like, no, that's not true. Like my lawyer told me that, because I was grandfathered in, because I was a professional before I chose that sport. And you can't tell a dentist that he can't be a dentist no more because now he gonna pick up weightlifting. Like you're an idiot. So, there was a way around it. And I've done that my whole life. Like, it's better to be prepared and well-read than to have talent. Like, talent is going to fade. It's going to disappear, just like beauty and your speed. Like, that stuff going to go away. But, like, your brain is not going nowhere if you do the right things by it. And, like, I had the first guaranteed pro wrestling contract. There's nobody that ever had a guaranteed multi-million-dollar deal before I did. And there was a lot of people that hated me for that. I mean, they fucking hated me. I'm sorry, my language.
Oh, it's good.
Like they really, man, I went through it, man. Like I helped make the world better for Kurt. You know, like
and
laid the foundation.
They offered me the same contract as you right after the Olympics. I turned it down. And because my agent told me, you're not doing that fake stuff. You're the real deal. Stay with amateur wrestling. I'll get you a job as a sportscaster. And then when I went back to WWE and I told them I'd like to try out, or I told them if that contract, does it still stand? And they said, no, you're going to have to come up and try out. So I went up and tried out. And you're right. The contract wasn't there anymore. It was, I got 75 grand a year. That was my contract. So you basically, because you had to, how do I say this?
I had to quit. Yeah. I had to quit my life.
Yeah.
Like I had to quit being legitimately the world's strongest man. It was hard.
Right.
Well, like anybody that's ever been good at anything, imagine they say, hey, you can't do that no more. You got to only do this. And
oh, no, you're right. That would suck. But